A judge in Minnesota is ordering the acting head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement to appeal.
Hold restrictions on how law enforcement can respond.
President Trump says he's now sending Border Czar Tom Homan to Minnesota, and some Senate Democrats
getting essentially his day in court. And so the judge in this case is
CBS News. Top Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee have asked Justice Department officials to handle.
And good evening. We begin tonight with the fast-moving developments in Minneapolis after a protest.
Says officers were trying to arrest a suspect convicted of domestic assault.
What's really going on with America right now? Death threats popping up every day, the law clashing with power, and the streets right on the edge of riots. Do you feel like time is running out? Late January 2026, Minneapolis got hit hard, one thing after another. Hate exploding, lawsuits piling up, orders coming down, angry words flying, crowds closing in tight, warnings of force echoing through the freezing night. Everything's moving way too fast, way too harsh. No time for anyone to step back. Before we go any further, just say a quick prayer, like one last anchor in the storm that's opening up, okay? Amen. And now, so you don't have to wait long, let's jump right in with death threats against ICE agents jumped 80% in just a few weeks, dragging their families into a swamp of violence. You fascist pig! Kill yourself! I hope your wife dies screaming. Those exact words came in voicemails sent to ICE agents' phones in Minneapolis. No metaphors, no hints, just plain calls for violence. When you read or hear those messages, you're seeing the kind of talk the Bible described a long time ago. Words no longer held back by conscience or any fear of what's holy. From January 24 to 27, 2026, after the shootings that killed American citizens Alex Preddy and Renee Good, DHS recorded an 80% increase in death threats aimed at ICE agents, with assaults up 300% compared to the same time period. The numbers show how quickly the hatred is rising, not just in how many, but in how intense it is. 2 Timothy 3:1-3 describes this exact situation. But mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. People will be abusive without love. The passage isn't about one specific group. It's about the general state of society when moral restraint breaks down. On the 26th of January 2026, DHS released some sample voicemails to show how bad it has gotten. The content doesn't stop at personal insults. It goes straight to cursing families, calling for suicide, and threatening to hunt people down. Doxing comes along with it, forcing many families to change their everyday routines. We see a clear parallel here with Matthew 24:9, where the prophecy points to rising persecution and hatred. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. The focus of the verse isn't on any particular label. It's on hatred becoming a group reflex. According to Fox News, security officials say the tense political climate has let violent language spread more easily. That view got quick pushback online. Some folks say the 80% figure is exaggerated since it started from a very low number. Others argue that no matter how you figure the percentage, threatening innocent families has gone way beyond policy arguments. 2 Timothy 3:12 adds an important point. In fact, everyone who wants to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. The verse doesn't predict every detail, but it lays out a rule. Pressure and opposition will grow when society hits unstable times. What's worth noting is that the Bible doesn't describe hatred as some random outburst, but as the result of a chain of moral decline. 2 Timothy 3 lists traits: lovers of themselves, boastful, abusive in speech, as signs that show up together. When we look at the current data, we don't need to put religious labels on anyone to see the similar patterns of behavior. Many people push back against making this connection, saying quoting the Bible might hide the real social and political factors. Still, as a kind of warning, the Bible doesn't replace modern analysis. It puts it in a longer moral frame. Matthew 24 isn't meant to explain policy details. It shows the spiritual direction humanity takes when conflicts rise and hearts grow hard. Looking back at the stream of threatening voicemails, the huge spike in numbers, and the arguments around them, we see one clear point: the normalizing of calls for violence. The Bible has warned about this state for a long time, not as a detailed forecast, but as a caution about what happens when society loses its moral boundaries. The question left hanging isn't who's right or wrong in the political debate, but whether these curses will stay just words, or if they're only the start of a deeper escalation where law and violence will collide head-on in the days ahead. Legal war breaks out. Judge orders ICE director to show up in Minneapolis court. The tension isn't just on the streets anymore, it's right in the courtroom. Legal papers are getting signed fast, summons are going out, and big titles are facing off head-to-head. Things in Minnesota have shifted to full alert mode. We're seeing a moment where the law isn't just settling a dispute, it's becoming the battlefield itself. On the 12th of January, 2026, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, along with the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, filed a lawsuit to stop Operation Metro Surge, the big federal immigration crackdown that started back in December 2025. This case isn't only about one program. It's questioning where the line is between state power and federal power, especially with all the violence and protests pulling society apart. The big moment came when federal judge Patrick J. Schiltz ordered the ICE director to appear in person at the Minneapolis courthouse on the 30th of January 2026, or face possible contempt of court. This is a rare, strong move that shows the courts are ready to step deep into the fight with the executive branch. Wisconsin's Attorney General quickly jumped in to help, spreading the conflict beyond just one state. CNN covered it and said constitutional law experts call this one of the most intense power clashes over immigration policy in years. Supporters of the Trump administration say the lawsuit is obstruction of justice, blocking federal law enforcement. The other side says it's about protecting local authority and citizens' rights. You can feel the tug-of-war. Both sides quote the law, but they end up in completely opposite places. In all this, the Bible doesn't come in as judgment, but as a way to understand the repeating pattern of power. John 18:37-38 records the talk between Jesus and Pilate. "You are a king, then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. What is truth?" Pilate asked. That question, "What is truth?" echoes from an ancient courtroom, mirroring the moral fog when political and legal power clash without common ground. The similarity isn't in the people, but in the setup. One side holds the power to judge, the other gets summoned, and both stand in a space where truth is being fought over. We see that picture again as the judge, attorney general, and federal agency all claim their actions are legal, needed, and right. Then John 19:10-11 goes further. "Don't you realize I have power to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above." Bible scholars see this as a reminder that all power, no matter how strong, has limits. Applied today, it explains why earthly systems often hit dead ends. Each side believes their power is the highest. Some political experts say conflicts like this are just a natural result of America's federal system, where powers overlap. Others warn that when disputes heat up during social unrest, courts can end up adding fuel to street tensions. Revelation 13-7 gets mentioned as a symbolic picture. It was given power to wage war and to conquer them. Not to say it's the same situation, but to capture the feeling that power, when pushed to the edge, tends to expand and crash into itself. From a neutral view, the lawsuit and the summons are legal steps within the U.S. Constitution. But happening amid rising threats of violence and spreading protests, their impact goes way beyond the courtroom. We're not just watching a lawsuit, we're seeing a test of whether the legal system can handle the pressure from society. The legal chaos between federal and local isn't the end by itself, but it's a sign of that nation against nation state mentioned in prophetic texts. When the law becomes the front line, the consequences aren't limited to files and rulings anymore. The 30th of January 2026 is coming up fast. That court hearing could close the dispute with solid legal reasoning, or it could spark a whole new chain of reactions out on the streets. The open question isn't who wins the case, but whether the coming ruling will cool things down or accidentally add more fire to a society already on the edge of instability. Trump sent Tom Homan to Minneapolis right away that night. Things changed fast after he called Walz and Frey. A decision from Washington turned everything around in just a few hours. It put the city right in the middle of a new showdown between the federal government and local leaders. The order came down quick and clear. No beating around the bush. Tension shot up right away once everyone realized this wasn't just testing the waters anymore. It was the real thing on the ground. After phone calls on the 26th of January 2026, President Donald Trump decided to send Tom Homan to Minneapolis on the 27th of January 2026, taking over the coordination role from before. The meeting happened that same day with Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey at the St. Paul Capitol, plus one other spot that wasn't made public. The message from the White House was straight. Just give us your criminals. It all goes away. Minneapolis stuck to their guns. They weren't changing the city's current sanctuary policy. On the surface, it's about public safety. Underneath, it's heavy political pressure piling up. Sending in someone known for being tough shows, Washington wants to reset how things work together and test how far local power really goes. You have to wonder what happens when two opposite approaches have to sit down at the same table, especially when trust is already running thin. Nehemiah 2:17-18 talks about a city in ruins, with people against it. Then the call goes out in front of everyone. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. It's the picture of a leader stepping into the mess, choosing to act instead of waiting. It reminds you how tough decisions often come when pressure keeps building. Policy experts say sending Homan is a strong signal meant to force the local side to respond with real action. Some think this approach could bring short-term order if they work out the details, but it also risks making the divide deeper if both sides see authority differently. The fast pace of decisions leaves less room for give and take. Nehemiah 4:14 describes a moment when fear is spreading. Then the reminder comes to steady everyone before the fight. Don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your families. The passage shows power struggles often come with emotional pressure, and choosing to stand firm or back down both leave long-lasting effects. In the meeting, the city side made it clear they won't change the protection principles they've already stated. That creates a real challenge: how to keep things safe without breaking the local legal foundation. Some security analysts warn that stubbornness on both sides could push the tension into other parts of the justice and government systems. Nehemiah 6-9 mentions tactics meant to scare the leader and wear him down. Then it ends with a prayer for strength to keep going. They were all trying to frighten us, but I prayed, now strengthen my hands. This line suggests that when pressure ramps up, it's not just about winning or losing. It's about staying steady in the middle of all the noise. These two parallel ways of seeing things show a deep split in how people view policy. Every decision gets judged through the lens of power and legitimacy. Matthew 24-7 talks about a time of division with the image kingdom against kingdom, hinting at conflict that keeps growing, not just between communities, but inside power structures too. Applied to today, this isn't about predicting the end. It's about the pattern. Long, drawn-out clashes often open the door to a chain of hard-to-predict results. The meeting was called productive, but the real test will come from what happens next. Will this move create the quiet space needed to rebuild cooperation, or is it just a short calm before a bigger wave hits? The answer will show itself when decisions move from the meeting room out into the real world. Walz compares ICE to Holocaust, with Anne Frank. Sparking wave of outrage. A shocking statement shakes up national opinion. On January 27, 2026, right on Holocaust Remembrance Day, Governor Tim Walz made a comparison that blew up the political scene in just hours, triggering fierce backlash from all sides. Hearing those words, folks might wonder what boundaries are getting crossed in public debates. In the midst of rising tensions around immigration policy and ICE operations, Walz said kids in Minnesota are hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside, and compared that fear to Anne Frank's situation. The words came out right on the Remembrance Day, ramping up the emotional impact and turning a political remark into a hot ethical issue. From news sites, just hours after the statement, the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum issued a strong condemnation, calling the comparison deeply offensive and accusing it of using the Holocaust tragedy for political gain. Around the same time, the Trump administration's anti-Semitism envoy shot back that Anne Frank was in Amsterdam legally, pointing out the basic differences in historical and legal context. Matthew 24-11 warns about the power of misleading words in troubled times, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. This Bible verse focuses on how words can be used to steer collective emotions, especially when society's tense and easy to rile up. Public reaction data shows clear divisions. From news sites, social platforms logged hundreds of thousands of comments in the first 24 hours, with two sharply opposing views. One side sees the statement as an insult to historical memory, the other as a real description of fear in immigrant communities facing enforcement campaigns. Matthew 24-24 expands on this picture when it talks about the power to deceive with shocking messages. For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. Here, the Bible's role isn't to make political judgments, but to remind us of the temptation in extreme comparisons. Media analysts say linking a current issue to Holocaust symbols grabs instant attention, but it also knocks the discussion off a rational track. When Anne Frank's image gets pulled into policy debates, the focus shifts from arguments to emotional reactions, shrinking the space for real dialogue fast. From news sites, some Jewish organizations and history scholars spoke out, stressing that the Holocaust is unique in scale and meaning and can't be used as a regular political metaphor. This argument draws on historical data: 6 million Jews killed, plus millions more victims in an organized genocide like nothing else. 2 Peter 2-1 gives a direct warning about misleading messages in the community. But there were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you. Placed next to the current debate, this Bible verse reads like a moral charge against twisting historical truth. Walz's supporters argue he didn't mean to compare scale or nature, but just to describe the real fear kids in immigrant families feel. They say the strong backlash is overshadowing the core issue of widespread unease in communities, as noted in recent social reports. Still, the debate doesn't stop at personal intent. The problem's in the fallout from words spoken from a high-power position in the state. Using humanity's painful memories for today's arguments is seen as a sign of declining public moral standards, especially in a society already deeply divided. Matthew 24-11 and 24-24, along with 2 Peter 2-1, when put together, form a chain of warnings about times when words can become tools for division stronger than any policy. They don't target specific people, but point to a rule. When truth gets bent to serve a purpose, the consequences spread beyond control. The open question is whether this statement will fade like a short media storm, or keep widening the social cracks that are already there. If words keep getting pushed to extremes, where does the cycle of hate stop? Those agitator protests against ICE are heating up, and experts predict more riots as the weather gets warmer. Minneapolis streets are echoing with angry chants, metal barriers shaking, police lights flashing blue and red through the bitter cold night. The protests aimed at ICE aren't peaceful anymore. They've turned chaotic and super tense, spreading fast from downtown out to nearby areas, leaving everyone feeling on edge across the city. In the last days of January, crowds are showing up more often and stronger, with harsher slogans and more face-to-face clashes with police. A lot of streets are blocked off for now, shop windows boarded up, government buildings on high alert. You can really sense the tight atmosphere. Every step feels like it could spark a fight. Reports say some groups tagged as agitators came better prepared for long standoffs, with homemade shields, helmets, and supply spots scattered around. Federal security folks have talked about possible outside funding and organized planning, which makes violence more likely when the crowd gets really fired up. Matthew 24:6-7 gives an early heads up about troubles like this. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Put in today's American streets, those rumors of wars aren't off at some distant border. They're right in our neighborhoods. Julio Rosa, who wrote Fiery but Mostly Peaceful, said on Fox News on the 27th of January 2026 that he expects clashes to get worse when it warms up. His take is that once temps climb above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, more folks come out, protests last longer, and the odds of deadly encounters go way up, especially in big cities like Chicago and Los Angeles. Security reviews point out that winter has been like a natural break on street violence. As snow melts and it gets warmer, those calming factors fade, letting months of built-up grudges come out. We're watching a shift from quiet tension to the real chance of big, open confrontations. Revelation 6-4 paints a strong picture of peace being taken away. Then, another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. Folks often point to this verse as a warning about times when violence flares up from nothing more than built-up hate. Not everybody sees it that way. Plenty of civil rights folks stress that protesting is a real right to free speech, protected by the Constitution, and slapping the riot label on every gathering is a risky oversimplification. They say most people there don't want trouble, and only a small extreme group pushes things too far. Matthew 24:6 keeps stressing to stay level-headed. Scene. Right now, the picture shows an uncertain summer starting to take shape. These furious protests aren't slowing down, while the sparks for violence are lining up, just waiting for the right moment. When the weather turns, winter's fragile calm could give way to something much rougher, where peace feels like a real luxury. Issued an order to disperse and threatened force across Minneapolis. The decisions came down hard and fast that night. Short, sharp, cold, with no room to back off. The dispersal order was read out loud over loudspeakers, along with a warning that tear gas and less lethal devices would be used if the crowd didn't leave. At that moment, you didn't have to imagine much to feel the pressure tightening around every breath on the streets of Minneapolis. The steady voice of the security forces cut through the biting cold, stressing that this was a public safety order taking effect right away near the Green Sleep Number store. The warning was clear. Enforcement could include chemical agents and less lethal devices. No emotional words, no long back and forth, just straight commands and a countdown. On the ground, reactions split two ways. Some people quietly slipped away, while others kept chanting, clapping, and stomping their feet in defiance. Tension shot up fast as the gap between police and the crowd shrank. The flashing lights from patrol cars bounced off the wet, cold pavement, making everything feel heavier and longer. Exodus 5:6-9 records a similar decision in terms of raw power. That same day, Pharaoh gave this order: make the people work harder so that they keep working and pay no attention to lies. In the Bible, Pharaoh's command wasn't about talking things out. It was about control and suppression. pushing the conflict straight into face-to-face confrontation. According to local public safety reports, the dispersal order came after hours of watching the risk climb, when the crowd size went beyond the limit and signs of physical standoff appeared. The reasons they gave included the danger of injury to protesters, law enforcement, and nearby property. Everything was laid out in technical, cold, exact language. In that setting, using stronger measures was described as the last step to restore order. Opponents say the line between keeping people safe and cracking down on peaceful assembly is getting blurred. Still, officials insist the order follows current laws and standard urban security procedures. Exodus 14:13 offers another view when facing power and fear. Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. In the Exodus story, pressure from worldly authority hits its peak right before everything shifts, turning a moment of being cornered into the start of a major turning point. Crowd control experts point out that announcing the possible use of chemical agents is often more about psychological deterrence than immediate action. But once the order is read and time runs out, even small movements can be seen as resistance. That's the most dangerous part of situations like this. From a biblical angle, tough decisions by earthly power are often seen as tests, forcing people to choose between fear and faith. Exodus 5 shows that suppression doesn't kill the conflict, it just pushes it into a tighter, more intense form, setting up a bigger showdown ahead. Protesters argue that threatening force, even if called less lethal, still creates a coercive atmosphere and chips away at civil rights. Meanwhile, security forces stress their duty to stop violence from spreading, especially once agitators show up in the crowd. Exodus 14:13 isn't just about rescue. It also hints that the heaviest pressure usually comes right before a historic shift. When power clamps down hard, conflict doesn't vanish. It waits to erupt in a different, fiercer, harder to control way. The picture right now shows a clear escalation in how protests are handled. Quick orders, hard language, and readiness to use strong measures. Many analysts see this as a sign of a tighter control cycle, where security comes before dialogue. The big question still hanging is what the crowd does next. With the order given and the line drawn, will compliance cool things down? Or will this very pressure push the situation past the point of no return? The protest outside the hotel rang out with shouts of "Freedom of speech!" Outside the Maple Grove Hotel, a crowd gathered in the dark night. Their chants echoed off the windows, while police lights swept across angry, tense faces. The air felt thick with yelling, car horns, and the sound of stomping feet. You could sense how thin the line was between a protest and real violence. It was stretched dangerously tight. On the night of the 26th of January, 2026, hundreds of people came together around the hotel area because they believed Commander Bovino was inside. The chant, "Freedom of speech," kept going, mixed with shouts of, "Nobody is resisting." It created a wild, hard-to-control mix of noise. There was no room left for talking, just raw sound and emotion clashing. Police quickly told the crowd to step back about 3 feet to set up a safety zone. When not everyone listened right away, the officers started closing in, step by step, forming a kettling circle. The move was fast and firm, trapping the crowd both physically and mentally. Acts 19:28-9 describes something similar in Ephesus. The city was thrown into an uproar, and they rushed together into the theater. In the Bible, the crowd didn't need one clear reason to get mad. Once the feeling spread, order was swept away in seconds. Once the kettling circle was complete, arrests began in small groups. Some people clapped and played music as a kind of challenge, while others looked confused and tried to back away but couldn't find a way out. Tension rose in heavy silence, broken only by scattered shouts. Acts 19:32 paints the real nature of crowd chaos. The assembly was in confusion. Some were shouting one thing, some another. This Bible passage doesn't paint heroes or villains. It just shows the raw truth of disorder when group emotion takes over reason. Supporters of the protest say it was a peaceful action that got cracked down on too hard. They argue that kettling and arresting dozens of people only made people more upset instead of calming things down. On the other side, security says the lockdown was needed to stop violence from spreading, especially since the crowd wouldn't step back as asked. In this flood of information, truth gets broken into pieces, with each side holding its own version. That very split makes crowds easier to lead, because feelings take the place of full understanding. This pattern isn't new in Bible history. Acts 19 shows the crowd in Ephesus turning against Paul without fully knowing what they were against. Yet their anger was strong enough to throw the whole city into chaos. The Bible doesn't just tell old stories. It warns us about this human tendency when we lack a solid spiritual anchor. Amid the shouts of "Who are you serving?" right at the hotel entrance, that question goes beyond local politics or power. It reaches deeper into faith and values, forcing each person to face their own inner choice in the middle of outside chaos. Luke 21:25-6 talks about distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. These words are often seen as a picture of a troubled world where nations stay confused for a long time, with no shared foundation to cool down conflicts. Sociologists point out that when symbols, slogans, and fears mix together, crowds can quickly shift from expressing themselves to confronting others. In that setting, strong measures usually only handle the surface, while the real roots of unrest keep smoldering, waiting for the next spark. Here, the Bible doesn't come as a quick judgment, but as a quiet, awake and aware. In the middle of crowd chaos, the Bible reminds us that it's whether people will find that anchor again before the next swirl of chaos comes. Here are the 7 signs put together, not to scare anyone, but to help put all these observations into a bigger picture that makes sense. When you look at them side by side, a familiar pattern shows up: spreading unrest, fragile order, and people feeling more and more lost about what's coming next. The Bible speaks plainly about this in Matthew 24:3-8. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. These signs don't stand alone. They come one after another like warning signals. When you place those 7 signs next to the opening of the seals in Revelation 6:1-8, the connection becomes even clearer. It describes a chain of events that directly hit peace, food supply, and human life. I looked, and there before me was a white horse, then a red horse that took peace from the earth, a black horse with scales for measuring grain, and a pale horse named Death. The way Scripture describes it isn't pointing to just one single moment. It paints a repeating, intensifying process. What's important to notice is that the Bible doesn't push panic, just the opposite. Matthew 24:6 says, "See to it that you are not alarmed." When you view these 7 signs through that lens, they become an invitation to think clearly and calmly. You're not forced to believe anything right away. You're simply asked to compare, reflect, and ask yourself where you stand in all this. From that viewpoint, the real focus isn't on trying to guess the day or the hour. Matthew 24:36 makes it very plain, but about that day or hour no one knows. The heart of the matter is inner preparation. Repentance isn't about being terrified of punishment. It's about turning back to what is right, changing direction, and living with more responsibility toward your faith, toward others, and toward yourself. If these signs cause you to pause and think, let that quiet moment lead you to prayer. You're welcome to leave a short prayer or a sincere thought in the comments below, as a simple way to mark that you've taken this seriously. We're not walking this path alone, and every honest word shared can encourage someone else. If this message was helpful to you, please give it a like, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's next. The goal in spreading it isn't to create worry, but to give more people a calm chance to reflect and stay awake. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. I pray that you and your family stay in peace and stand strong in faith. Amen.
Liz, how about this news that President Trump is sending Tom Homan there? Is that welcome?
In a Truth Social post, Trump said he had a good call with Governor Tim Walz and appeared
moments before Alex Preddy was shot and killed by Border Patrol. Accounts of what happened.
A federal immigration officer shooting a 37-year-old man in Minneapolis. Family
pull these 3,000 untrained agents out of Minnesota before they kill another person.
Gun that looked like Preddy's. Then Preddy is shot.
Launched a criminal investigation into Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor.
Overnight, they were trying to violently break into that hotel because...
What's really going on when a city suddenly explodes from the inside? In just a few short days, order falls apart. Streets fill with tear gas and smoke. Screams tear through the night, and violence spills out like a broken dam. Power clashes with power. Guns get stolen, blood is spilled in places that used to feel safe, and the future gets blurrier, hour by hour, minute by minute, as if time itself is being squeezed tight. Investigations come fast and furious. Urgent orders from the very top. Waves of anger spread quickly. Huge amounts of money get dragged out of the shadows. Everything happens so fast, so urgent, that nobody has time to catch their breath. Do you think this is just random chaos? Or is it a sign of something much bigger? There are questions we can't avoid, and gaps that force us to look deeper into what's really behind all this. Stay with me, because the next part will show an even more frightening picture. If worry is rising in your heart, leave a prayer in the comments as a way to express your faith. And now, let's get right to the event that's been shaking the United States these past few days. Trump has moved to send Tom Homan right away to Minnesota to enforce the law. On January 20, 2026, a short announcement from Washington put the whole state of Minnesota on high alert. President Donald Trump said he was sending Tom Homan, the border czar, to take direct command of ICE operations in the state. The statement was straight to the point, no delay, and it came with a clear warning. He might use the Insurrection Act if order keeps slipping away. That made it plain this isn't just another policy argument anymore, it's the federal government stepping in for real. Before this decision came down, Minnesota had already been shaken by big immigration sweeps. Thousands of ICE agents were sent in quickly, checkpoints popped up everywhere, and the number of people detained went up fast, day after day. Fox News reported that in less than 2 weeks, arrests tied to illegal immigration shot way up. That sparked strong pushback spreading from neighborhoods to city halls, and tension covered the whole state. At the same time, a quiet but serious legal move was made. On January 17, the U.S. Department of Justice issued subpoenas to Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. They face accusations of blocking federal law enforcement through their public statements and orders. The news poured fuel on the fire because it put state leaders right in the middle of an investigation while the streets were already boiling. In all this, Tom Homan shows up not just as a security official, but as a symbol of tough federal action. He led ICE during President Trump's first term and was known for no-nonsense raids and direct leadership. Coming back now, reporting straight to the president, makes it clear this isn't a test run. It's a calculated step to restore order, whatever it takes. Public reactions split fast and hard. Some folks say this is needed when federal law gets openly challenged. Others worry it could lead to bigger clashes between the government and regular people. Debates filled the news, and social media blew up by the hour. You could feel the unease growing as people realized one executive decision might bring consequences no one saw coming. In the middle of all these piled-up events, the Bible records a thought-provoking example of how power gets used in chaotic times. Isaiah 45:1 talks about Cyrus, the king of Persia, with these words, "The Lord says to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have grasped, to subdue nations before him." This man wasn't part of God's chosen people, yet he was placed in a key role during a major turning point in history. Isaiah 45:4 explains the reason for that choice. "For the sake of my servant Jacob, and Israel my chosen, I call you by your name. I name you. though you do not know me." These verses show that sometimes a tool is used not because it's perfect, but because the timing is right to carry out a bigger purpose. And Isaiah 45:13 makes it even clearer. "I have stirred him up in righteousness, and I will make all his ways level. He shall build my city and set my exiles free, not for price or reward, says the Lord of hosts." When people look at these words next to what's happening in Minnesota right now, a lot of them start wondering about the line between justice, power, and outside intervention when society gets chaotic. Right now, the decision to send Tom Homan to Minnesota is still sending shockwaves with no sign of stopping. The operations keep going, the arguments haven't cooled off, and the cover over long-standing problems is slowly being pulled back. When someone with that kind of power steps into the storm like this, what's still unknown isn't just how the raids turn out, it's what other truths might come out as this story keeps unfolding. The shooting of Alex Preddy, a sign of violence in the last days. One shot in the middle of a busy street, one person falls, and the fragile order of society gets torn apart in just a few seconds. This isn't just regular news anymore. It's a hard wake-up call that forces people to face reality. When violence happens right out in the open in broad daylight, no one can pretend things are still under control. On the 24th of January 2026, Nicollet Avenue in Minneapolis became the center of heartbreak. Alex Jeffrey Preddy, 37 years old, an ICU nurse who worked for the VA system taking care of veterans, was shot and killed by a Border Patrol agent. The statement from DHS said the shooting was in self-defense because the victim was approaching with a weapon. But what happened next shook that whole explanation. Online reports and video descriptions, including body cam footage and frame-by-frame analysis, show Preddy wasn't holding a gun, he just had a phone in his hand. This was the second deadly incident in the same month involving ICE agents, raising serious questions about how power is used and checked. Preddy had no criminal record, was a native-born American, a Democratic voter, and he showed up at the protest simply as a citizen speaking out after Renee Good's death earlier. Right after the shots, the scene turned into chaos. Hundreds of people flooded the streets, angry shouts filled the freezing air. "This is abuse of power," kept getting yelled over and over. Tear gas spread everywhere. Blood stained the pavement. And in that crowd, one family faced a loss nothing could ever fix. In the middle of all those trembling people, can you feel the fear spreading faster than any fire? Matthew 24:6-7 warned very clearly about what happens when order breaks down. "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for those things must happen first, but the end is not yet. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." Violence isn't just far away on battlefields anymore. It explodes right in the heart of cities, among people who once thought they were safe. A lot of quick opinions blamed the victim, saying he brought it on himself by carrying a gun. But when the images came out, those accusations fell apart. The plain truth shows a man was judged and sentenced in a split second. No trial, no chance to defend himself. In that moment, the line between protection and violence got scary, blurry. Matthew 24:8 goes on to stress the deeper meaning of events like this. But all these things are only the beginning of birth pains. Preddy's death isn't some isolated thing. It's the first real contraction signaling bigger, rougher changes coming. When violence becomes automatic, society starts sliding into a time where fear calls the shots. Luke 21:25-6 paints a picture no one can ignore. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth, nations will be in anguish and perplexity at the roaring and tossing of the sea. People will faint from terror, apprehensive of what is coming on the world. It's not just natural disasters or cosmic stuff. It's the sheer panic of people facing spreading violence that's a clear sign of this warning. Preddy fell right in the middle of the city, just like what was foretold. Violence will spread wide, people will live in fear, and confusion will become the normal state. This event proves the first pains have started, not some distant prediction, but reality happening day by day. And when the gun smoke clears, one cold question still hangs in the air. Who's being investigated for helping push society to this edge of violence? And what else will come out as the chain of events keeps going, with no sign of stopping? DOJ unexpectedly opens investigation into Walls and Frey. On the 17th of January 2026, the U.S. Department of Justice put out an official notice. Subpoenas have been sent to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, and several other local officials. This step comes as tensions keep rising over federal immigration enforcement actions in Minnesota, putting the whole local leadership under serious legal scrutiny. When the announcement came out, you could really feel that the line of the law was being tested. From what the subpoenas say, the DOJ is looking into possible obstruction of federal law enforcement tied to public statements and actions that are said to have weakened ICE operations. As online news reports describe it, this isn't a final charge yet. It's just a step to gather information and see if there's any violation of federal law. The background of the case is pretty clear. Governor Tim Walz once called ICE activities in Minnesota a kind of occupation, while Mayor Jacob Frey was noted for advising people to call 911 if they spotted ICE agents around. According to the federal side, these statements need to be looked at in connection with the violent protests happening around the same time. From a legal point of view, the main focus of the investigation isn't political opinions, it's the real-world impact. The DOJ is checking whether the local leaders' statements helped create a systematic obstruction of federal operations. This is a common process in conflicts over authority between federal and state governments, especially in unstable times. In this situation, Romans 13:1-2 often gets quoted as a basic principle. Everyone must submit to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. But in a neutral approach, this Bible passage isn't used to condemn anyone personally. It's more like a mirror to reflect on the relationship between authority, order, and responsibility, instead of giving a ready-made judgment. Bible scholars also point out that Romans 13 has been debated a lot throughout history, especially when government and people clash. Some interpretations stress the need for order, while others warn about the dangers of abuse of power. That's why bringing up scripture here is for comparison, not to settle things. As online news reports describe, the DOJ is also looking at data on when the statements were made, how widely they spread, and the actual reactions on the streets. The stated goal is to figure out the cause and effect chain, not to assume motives. This shows the legal process is still in the gathering and analyzing stage. Romans 13:4 keeps coming up in many analyses to clarify the role of government. For the one in authority is God's servant. They do not bear the sword for no reason. In a neutral framework, this part acts like a theoretical check on power. If government exists to maintain order, then every action, whether federal or local, can be judged on whether it truly serves that order. Supporters of Walz and Frey say this is about free speech and the right to challenge policy. On the other side, the federal view stresses that when leaders' words can lead to obstructing the law or escalating violence, the legal line needs to be clearly drawn. Both arguments are out there right now, and neither has been proven right or wrong yet. What's clear is that Minnesota is becoming an important test case for the relationship between law, authority, and social order. The DOJ investigation isn't just about individuals. It reflects a bigger question about how power gets used in times of crisis. And while the subpoenas are still active, another line of inquiry is starting to emerge in the background, involving unclear money flows and interests. What will come out next? And who is really behind these conflicts? Large-scale welfare fraud. The love of money is the root of all evil. $250 million. 78 defendants. Hundreds of fake files. These numbers aren't just dry stats anymore. They're a direct hit to people's trust. When the Feeding Our Future case came to light, Minnesota wasn't just dealing with a big money scandal. It was facing a bigger question: how money can twist an entire welfare system that was set up to protect kids. According to federal records, about $250 million was siphoned out of a program meant to feed kids from low-income families. The money went through groups that were supposed to provide meals, but in reality, a lot of those places had no kids, no kitchens, and weren't even operating. Investigations showed empty daycares, food delivery vans listed as running non-stop, but actually sitting idle for months. Online news reports describe how, by 2026, the case is moving into a new phase. Some defendants are asking to move the trial location because they worry they won't get a fair trial, while the founder, Amy Bach, has been ordered to give back about $5.2 million in assets that came from the fraud. These updates show the legal process is still growing and hasn't wrapped up with what was first announced. Digging deeper into how the fraud was set up, prosecutors describe an organized network. Taxpayer money meant for kids' nutrition ended up paying for luxury vacations, fancy cars, and personal stuff that had nothing to do with the program. Some files even showed students who didn't exist getting education aid, while food transport vehicles were claimed to be active but didn't move for 8 straight months. The background of this case makes people ask more questions. Warning signs were reported as far back as 2011 to 2013, but it took years before anything was handled on a large scale. That has sparked debate about how well government agencies were watching things, even though no final legal ruling has pinned personal blame outside the case itself so far. The Bible often gets brought up not to accuse, but to explain human motives. 1 Timothy 6:10 says, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil." Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. This isn't just about cash. It's about when money becomes the top goal and blurs every moral line. Matthew 6:24 goes further. "No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other. You cannot serve both God and money." When you put this next to the Feeding Our Future case, many see it as explaining conflicts of interest. When public funds get turned into tools for personal gain, both moral and social order get turned upside down. James 5:1-3 shines a light on the long-term fallout. "Now listen, you rich people. Weep and wail. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you." Here, the Bible isn't predicting one specific case, but describing a rule. Wealth built the wrong way eventually becomes proof against the person who has it. Public policy experts warn that the damage from welfare fraud goes way beyond the dollars lost. People's trust in help programs gets eroded. Families who really need aid come under suspicion, and the whole system has to spend more on checks and controls. Once trust breaks, rebuilding it can take years, even generations. From an economic view, analysts point out these cases create a ripple effect. Budgets get tighter, rules get stricter, and the most vulnerable people feel the impact first. That's a social cost you can't measure just in dollars. It's fair to say exposing this fraud isn't only a legal story. It's a warning about how greed can wear away the shared moral foundation. When the light gets shown, it's not to rush to judge, but to make all of society look straight at what was hidden for too long. And as the money trails get followed back, another question is starting to come up. Who really benefited from this network? And why haven't some powerful names been mentioned yet? Allegations come up that Ilhan Omar benefited. If the truth comes out, who will still be standing? That line spread fast on social media early in 2026, when comments from politicians and federal oversight committees started big debates about assets and political ties in Minnesota. No official charges have been filed, but the questions were enough to put the story right in the public spotlight. From info shared a lot in 2026, people say Ilhan Omar's personal and family assets jumped a whole lot in a short time, with some controversial numbers popping up on forums and social media. A few sources talk about increases of tens of times over what was reported as income, while others point out there's no legal record proving any wrongdoing. Right here, it's key to separate accusations, guesses, and actual legal findings. The political setting makes the story more touchy. Ilhan Omar represents a district in Minnesota where the Somali community plays a big role. She spoke up before in support of welfare programs and community groups, including Feeding Our Future, before that fraud case got exposed. Supporting policies or groups, as analysts say, doesn't mean personal gain, but it opens the door for doubts in people's minds. While some folks argue the asset numbers mentioned just show legal investments or stuff that got blown up, others question the transparency and possible conflicts of interest. In the middle of all this back and forth, you can feel the haze and tension hanging over everything, where the line between truth, belief, and suspicion gets really thin. From what online news sites describe, the House Oversight Committee talked about looking into some financial and political connection issues, but so far, no official conclusion has come out. That has the online community split into different camps. One side calls for deeper investigation. The other warns about the danger of trial by public opinion without solid proof. 2 Peter 2:1-3 says, "But there were also false prophets among the people. Out of greed, they will use made-up words to exploit you." This part is usually seen as a warning about using moral-sounding talk to hide selfish motives, not an instant judgment on any one person. Jeremiah 6:13, 1-4 goes further. "From the least to the greatest, everyone is greedy. They dress the wound of my people as though it were not serious, saying, 'Peace, peace,' when there is no peace." Here the Bible calls out a pattern that keeps showing up in history. Comforting words used to calm people down, while the real problems stay unsolved. Ezekiel 13:10 gets brought up too, as a similar warning. "Because they have misled my people, saying, 'Peace,' when there is no peace." When you put it next to today's arguments, this isn't about labeling anyone a fake, but it raises questions about leaders' responsibility when they speak and act during a crisis of trust. Neutral observers say that in today's divided politics, financial accusations get used easily as weapons to attack. On the flip side, others stress that the murkiness and lack of openness create perfect ground for doubts to grow. Both views sit side by side, and neither has one with clear evidence yet. So, what the Bible stresses isn't jumping right to who's right, who's wrong, but calling us to stay awake and careful around nice-sounding words that lack real truth behind them. When faith gets tested, it doesn't push us to condemn, but to look more closely and thoughtfully. And while the asset story still has a lot of blanks, another topic is quietly rising in the background: organized protests and funding streams behind them with unclear sources. Who's really behind them, and for what purpose? Violent protests against ICE, end times mobs. Headlines hit hard and fast. Pictures spread quicker than anyone can check them. And in all that noise, it's easy to feel like you can't breathe. What are we really seeing here? A real protest movement, or a wave that's gotten completely out of hand? When order gets pushed back by loud shouts and stomping feet, that question starts feeling more urgent than ever. Starting the 23rd of January 2026, a wave of general strikes and protests against ICE broke out in cities across the U.S. FBI vehicles got attacked. A Hilton hotel was smashed up because people thought agents were hiding inside. Tear gas filled the streets. At least 12 people were arrested for assaulting federal officers, including cases tied to the Latin Kings gang, accused of stealing guns, pushing things way past a normal gathering. The background makes everything more tense. After the Pretty incident, even with temperatures dropping below zero, thousands still poured into the streets. The freezing cold didn't stop the crowd. It seemed to just add fuel to the anger. "Fight back," chants kept going non-stop, mixed with breaking glass, sirens, and chaotic footsteps, turning into hours of pushing and shoving. The widespread vandalism images draw a line that's hard to ignore. Protesting is a right protected by law, but when violence shows up, when property gets destroyed and weapons get stolen, the whole nature of what's happening starts to change. Some say this is democratic struggle. Others warn that when law gets challenged with fists, society steps into dangerous gray territory. In times like this, certain Bible passages get brought up as warnings, not to condemn anyone, but to shine a light on human nature when order starts to shake. 2 Timothy 3:1-5 says, "Know this, in the last days hard times will come. People will love themselves, love money, brag, be proud, love pleasure, more than they love God." The passage describes moral breakdown as a sign, not as a label stuck on any one group. The chaos in the crowds also makes many people think of a society eating itself up through greed and conflict. Revelation 18:2, 3 records. Fallen. Fallen is Babylon the Great, for the kings of the earth committed immorality with her, and the merchants of the earth grew rich from her excessive luxury. Read in a neutral way. Babylon isn't just a place, it's a picture of any system where self-interest and power pull people into a spiral of collapse. As violence ramps up, suspicion spreads fast too. Protesters clash with law enforcement, groups start doubting each other, and society gets pulled in opposite directions. Matthew 24:10 describes something similar. Then many will fall away, betray one another, and hate one another. Those words are often seen as a reminder of what happens when community trust breaks down. The real worry isn't just what's happening on the streets right now. It's where this path is heading. When crowds act with no limits, when ideals get lost in collective rage, society can slide into a chain of reactions that are hard to stop. The Bible verses mentioned here aren't meant to force belief on anyone. They're more like warning signs placed before a dangerous curve in the road. And in the end, one big question still hangs there, heavier than all the shouting. If this is just a spontaneous explosion, what made it spread so fast and so hard? And if it isn't, who's quietly steering that wave from behind? Shocking discovery. Mobs funded by fraud. These riots didn't just happen on their own. They're not simply sudden anger from crowds. They're the result of an organized system, with money behind it and people who benefit. When you hear the chants in the streets, you have to ask yourself, who's paying the price? And who's really profiting from all this chaos? Loose facts, when you put them side by side, start forming a clear chain. Financial fraud flows to scam groups. That money comes back as political support. And when those interests are threatened, crowds get stirred up to act as a shield. No public orders needed. The system runs smoothly thanks to shared benefits and careful silence. In that setting, some voting communities become especially important. Reports show Somali votes carry real weight for Democrats in certain key areas. When votes tie to power, power ties to money, and money needs protection. That closed circle of interests starts showing itself through unrest on the streets. This picture is often described with 3 parallel branches. The first branch is the crowd, showing up as direct pressure. The second is fraud and scams, supplying the financial fuel. The third is the leadership level, where decisions get justified and protected. The 3 branches don't need to meet openly, but they operate like one single body. When facing that kind of structure, many people turn to the Bible for something that feels more like decoding than just a conclusion. Revelation 13:16-17 says, "It also forced all people to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark." Here, the buy or sell part is often seen as economic control, where your place in society depends on an invisible system. That mark isn't just physical, it's about dependence. When people have to join a certain order just to survive, personal choices slowly get worn away. The link between money, power, and group action starts looking like a mechanism bigger than any one person. The next call in the Bible points a different way. Revelation 18:4 says, "Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins. Come out here doesn't always mean physically leaving a place. It means stepping away from being part of it, refusing to help or go along with a system built on deception and force. The vagueness makes a lot of people skeptical. Some say it's all just conspiracy theories pieced together from unrelated events. But those who study the Bible often point out that these warnings aren't about one single moment. They describe patterns that repeat when society slides into deep disorder. That's driven home even more in 2 Thessalonians 2-3-4. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs, and the man of lawlessness is revealed. The focus here isn't on naming a specific person. It's on the process. Deception spreading wide, values turned upside down, and power lifted up instead of truth. When those 3 branches work together, money feeds power, power protects violence, and violence keeps the money flowing. The system doesn't start out loud, but once you're caught in it, getting out gets harder and harder. What's happening now makes many people wonder, is this just coincidence? Or are we seeing an old pattern being played out again, one that was warned about long ago? And the final question still hangs there, heavier than the silence. If this really is an intentional structure, who's holding the strings that connect those 3 branches? And when everything comes out in the open, who gets to decide whether to stand aside or keep going along? Minnesota isn't the end of this story. What happened there is just the first small piece of a much bigger picture, one where the usual order starts cracking and signs of trouble keep showing up more and more often as time goes on. When we look back at that chain of events, the deep feeling that settles in doesn't come from fear. It comes from realizing that humanity is stepping into a serious time of testing when it comes to faith and the choices we make. The Bible mentions many times that moments like this would come. In Matthew 24-42, it says plainly, "So keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come." That's not a threat. It's a gentle wake-up call, asking people to open their eyes, open their hearts, and take a good look at the path they're on amid all the constant changes. In the middle of all the chaos, the easiest thing to lose is the peace inside. But the Bible doesn't leave us sitting in despair. In John 14:27, there's a promise that rings out even in the storm. "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives." That kind of peace doesn't depend on what's happening around us. It comes from a restored relationship with our Creator. The signs of the end times aren't just in the news headlines or cold statistics. They show up in how people treat each other, in the choices between greed and truth, between fear and hope. In 1 Thessalonians 5-6, Scripture reminds us, "So then, let us not be like others, who are asleep, but let us be awake and sober." It's an invitation to live with our eyes open, not to just give in to the swirling confusion. Right now, the important thing isn't to panic. It's to come back to the foundation of faith and let the light of truth shine on everything. Each of us has a moment where we need to pause and ask ourselves, where am I really putting my trust? And what am I getting ready for ahead? It's in that quiet space that faith grows stronger and hope comes back to life. If these thoughts touch your heart, take just a moment to leave a prayer or a sincere thought in the comments, as a way we can lift each other up and keep reminding ourselves what's truly important. Sharing, spreading the word, and following the channel is also a way to stay connected and not miss the next messages on this faith journey. Finally, thank you so much to everyone who's listened all the way to this point. May God's peace cover every family and every heart in these changing times. In Romans 15:13, it says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in Him." Amen.
A deadly gas explosion inside of a NYCHA building, killing a person overnight.
As firefighters made their way inside the building, people could be heard screaming.
Town was massive. We're talking about thousands of people that came out, and below, ICE has been using the airport to fly arrested individuals out of the state. While those
officials will go after their families as well. So it's a very coercive thing. So they have their
come this weekend. We'll update your forecast as Channel 5 News at 5 begins right now.
Is America sliding downhill faster than we think? Or has the clock already started ticking down? Fires break out in the city that never sleeps. Crowds clash in the freezing cold. Borders are cracking. Crime is creeping in. Resources are being drained dry. Underground networks are choking people. Violence is hitting the government head on. 7 news stories, 7 sharp cuts, coming fast, piling up, not giving anyone a chance to breathe. Everything's moving at once, like a whirlwind dragging the future right to the edge of the cliff. Do you think this is all just random? Or is it a sequence that's been put together on purpose? If these pieces fit together, what picture are we going to see? The answer isn't here yet. The space is still open, and what's about to come out behind it might change the way you look at the world forever. So before we go any deeper into this journey, please leave a prayer in the comments below as a way to tell God that we're listening to His warnings. Now, I'm going straight into the first extremely tense event. Big Bronx fire, flames from hell lighting up the New York sky. The fire shot up high, straight, like a fierce, bright column, bouncing off dark windows and shaking everything around. Thick black smoke rolled up, blocking out the New York sky, turning a regular night into something that stretched every sense to the breaking point. The old building on Bivona Street quickly became the center of total chaos. Flames climbed straight up, swallowing floor after floor, breaking glass and twisting metal mixed with the non-stop blare of fire truck sirens. Those video clips from the moment hit hard. Just watching them makes you feel that uneasy dread settling in, like the normal order of things got ripped apart. The Bronx is home to over 1 million people, packed into buildings that have stood for decades. Old gas lines, spotty repairs, quiet warnings that had been around for years. When the fires started, all those things linked up into a chain reaction nobody could stop. More than 200 firefighters rushed in. Ladder trucks reached high through the thick smoke, hoses blasting water non-stop into the blinding white-hot area, where every step forward was a line between life and death. Fox News reported and confirmed the damage fast. People killed, others hurt from burns and smoke, hundreds of residents left without a home in just a few hours. Out on the cold sidewalk, folks wrapped in thin blankets, staring at the scorched concrete that used to be their roof. It wasn't just stuff lost. It was the long-time feeling of being safe that came crashing down. Right in that scene, the Bible story from the original piece stands out clearer than ever. Genesis 19 tells about Sodom and Gomorrah, where fire came down from heaven, not just to destroy, but to show a society rotten from the inside. The similarity isn't in anything supernatural. It's in the wake-up call. When warning signs of decay get ignored too long, collapse comes as the only possible end. The black smoke covering the Bronx sky brings to mind Joel 2:30-31, where smoke and fire show up as signs that shake people's hearts. In the Bible, that's the moment folks have to face their limits, when everything that seemed solid suddenly feels fragile. Here, the smoke isn't just from the fire. It's a curtain hiding the belief that modern cities are always under control.